Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna, and in this video we're going to take a look at revisiting some old characters. So you can see on the left I have a character that I created back in 8th grade, and on the right is a more up-to-date take on the same character. And we're going to apply that to another character that I found in an old sketchbook, and we're going to walk through the entire process together. So this is the Surge Disruptor character that I drew one time back in 8th grade, January 20th, 1988 to be precise. And I haven't drawn this character before, so the first thing I want to do is I want to look at composition. So I'm going to create a thumbnail, which is a small, rough representation of the composition. So in the past, when I drew this character, I drew the character in a side view, very much like you would see in a side-scroller type of game. But I thought I'd go ahead and maybe see if I can make that pose a little bit more dynamic. So using the original drawing as a guide, I'm just thinking about the fact that maybe I want to have the kick come towards the viewer. So I'll start off by drawing the foot, and then I'll go ahead and bring the foreshortening aspects in for the body. And I want this character to appear like they are coming out towards us. So here I'm using my toucan technique to establish the position of the shoulders and the pelvis. I'll have links to that in the description for this video. I'm also using the drumstick approach, which is very helpful for drawing things like arms and legs. And I will also put a link to that as well. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We focus on drawing tips and techniques to help intermediate artists level up their game. So at the thumbnail stage, I really don't focus too much on details. I'm just trying to work out the pose. This character is doing some kind of a karate chop while kicking, and I felt like the hand didn't really fit, so I'm just going to move the hand up. So it's almost like he's preparing to swing his hand down. So after he kicks, he'll do his karate chop. And again, this is just me working out the pose. The wall that he's kicking, the stone wall, is actually something that I'm going to establish as being part of the foreground. You can see me working through that here. I'm throwing in some boulders and some other pebbles, debris. Obviously, when you kick something that is made of stone, you're going to have much smaller stones break out. I'm actually going to pull those outside of the panel. And this just helps me get a good sense of what this composition will look like. So I'm going to take that thumbnail now, and I'm going to blow it up and begin the process of actually formalizing the drawing, tightening it up. Drop the opacity. And I'll start in with the form. So the underdrawing is very helpful because it allows me to have a good scaffolding to work from. It's here that I can really refine the pose and begin to add some details. There's the drumstick for the thigh. When I draw, I use my entire arm. I have a Wacom Cintiq that I use to create my work. You can see a finished version of this piece on my Instagram account. It's simply Krishna Draws. That's where I post a lot of my work that you probably won't see on this channel. I think what's neat about looking at my old work is to see how far I've come since I was 14 years old. I think back then I didn't even consider the idea of digital tools. I didn't know what I didn't know. I drew really as a form of escape. I enjoyed drawing, and I wanted to learn more about cartooning, and I was very hungry for any bit of knowledge. Now we have YouTube. We have all sorts of great artists that are sharing their work. We have social media where people can get inspired by a lot of the work that they're seeing from other artists. Back then, that didn't really exist. I felt like as an artist, I was pretty much a square peg in a round hole. Every now and then you'd run into another kid that liked to draw. But for the most part, it's very difficult to find others and share techniques. Many of the art teachers that I had back then were also not really, they didn't look favorably upon cartooning. Many of them came from either a fine art background, and cartooning was very much dismissed. I remember many an art teacher kind of chiding me for drawing cartoony. They, I think they were trying to get me to go beyond my horizons and try something else, but I think the way they went about it basically made me dig my heels in a little bit deeper to focus on cartoony stuff. So here I'm adding some details. I'm bringing those spikes in on the side of his head, establishing a trapezoidal head shape. I'm doing this in real time. There's no speed up on this. Here's where I'm drawing the insignia that's on the character's chest. This cow skull was part of the bad guys that I would draw back then. I was very inspired by things like G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These were all things that were kind of in the ethos at the time. It was in the water. So I think 1988 would have been about the time, maybe right around when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were really getting popular. This might have been before the cartoon series, but the comic books were definitely hot. And so I think that's where this character may have had his origin from. I was very much into ninjas and kung fu, superheroes versus supervillain type of things. I just, probably a year prior, 2 years prior, just began to get introduced to the Marvel Universe. And I think that definitely left a huge influence on me. So this character has two little lasers. Here I'm trying to work out where those lasers are going to go. I think the neat thing about looking at this old drawing is just the fact that there was very little inhibition in these older drawings. They were just fun. I don't think I really looked at my work and said, this sucks. It was just a form of expression. So I just did it to the best of my ability, and I didn't give up halfway through saying this is a horrible drawing. And I've done that. I remember many a time crumpling up a sheet of paper. The original drawing that you see here was found in a box along with some other earlier drawings, usually on notebook paper, because I think that's what I would do during my study hall, or basically any other time that I had an opportunity to draw. I would always draw on the side of my notes during class. Gotten in trouble a couple times for doing that. I've had my papers taken up. I've had them crumpled. But I think maybe the teachers felt like I wasn't paying attention, but my argument was that that's how I processed information. And I don't think that I had the words to really articulate that. It was just, I don't know, I felt very, like I had to conform to, just sitting there with my eyes directly in front of me. And that's really not how I process information, so it was a little bit discouraging. So at this point, I've blocked in my characters. I'm putting some pebbles and borders, or breaking the borders, just to give this more kind of an in-your-face type of look. With the rocks exploding out of the panel, it just makes it seem like we're creating some depth. Anytime you have objects that overlap one another, you're creating depth. Now I can hide the original drawing and begin to focus on adding certain details. I'm establishing the texture of the wall, giving it some thickness. Black fills are really, really good when you're trying to create some separation and also pull the eye in. There's a common misconception among a lot of newer artists that inking is simply just the line art. And I think that viewpoint is pretty limiting. There's so much you can do with inks. And the more I study it as an artist myself, when I look at other people's work, the more I realize how expressive and how beautiful inking is. You can use it not only to denote the shapes of characters, but you can also use it to create contours. You can use it to create value, which is grayscale. And I'll make a video on that before too long, conveying value through inks, because I think there's a lot that you can do with just simply black and white. And I think it's a pretty fun topic to explore. Here I'm going back in, adding black to make certain parts of the character pop a little bit more. And periodically glancing at the reference. I'm trying to do right by it. I'm not trying to just copy it verbatim, but I'm using it as kind of an inspiration. maybe using it as a way of trying to get back into my thoughts at the time when I was drawing the character on what was important. Here I'm adding a few little shakes and vibrations to the feet to, again, suggest that the foot is moving at a very high rate of speed. Repeating those horizontal lines on the foot kind of give it this idea that the foot is, it's almost like a blur. It's like a motion blur. I'm now using a tool called Hedge Stylus, and this tool is very, very powerful. I think I've spoken about it in previous videos. It can do a number of things. It can help, it's almost like a digital French curve, but it's so much more than that because I'm using it here to create a series of lines that emanate radially from the center. So what it does is it just gives me almost like a ruler that I can interact with to create these speed lines. I'm going to temporarily hide those speed lines for now so I can focus on coloring. I use a mixture of digital colors as well as some of the True Grit Texture Supply halftone patterns. And what I'm doing here is I'm just closing this area off so that I can actually fill in colors. At this stage, I'm looking to close any gaps. It'll just facilitate the coloring process. I'm using the Magic Wand tool and then checking my selections to make sure that I haven't omitted any enclosed spaces. I always apply my colors or my patterns on a layer underneath my inks. What that allows me to do is it allows me to preserve the line quality of my inks. And here you can see, if you look really closely, there is a black and white representation right next to the pattern. That has to do with the parts of the pattern that are masked off. So white allows for visibility. You can actually see where the pattern is, and black is obscuring the pattern. These halftone patterns you can purchase from True Grit Texture Supply. There's some introductory videos on how to use it on that particular website. I think I've made a couple of videos myself on how to use it. So now I'm using the Magic Wand tool. I'm holding down the Shift key because all of these rocks and stones are going to be the same color. So instead of using the brush tool, what I'm going to do is make selections for each of the rocks. And then by holding down the Shift key, I can add to my Magic Wand tool selection. And then I can fill that in with a color or a pattern. It just makes the process very quick. Now, in terms of color, my thought process on this is that I want to use cool colors for the rocks in the foreground. As well as the wall. And that way I can use some more vivid or bright saturated colors for the character. Here I'm using the lasso tool to make selections around the wall. There are, if you look really closely at the wall itself, there's lots of little sub enclosures. And using the Magic Wand tool, would be a little bit slower because you'd have to select each one of those enclosures separately. But the Magic Wand tool allows you to select large swaths of enclosed areas at once, making it a better choice. So here I'm just once again comparing. Now I'm thinking about color schemes. This character is called the Surge Disruptor, so I think that maybe picking something that kind of looks greenish would be a good choice. You can't go wrong when you're picking colors to pick colors that are within the same family, like so monochromatic colors. If you're picking a green, a natural complement would be to pick a lighter or darker shade of green to go along with that. So here I'm trying this orange just to see what it's going to look like. I'm not digging it, so I am shifting more towards a desaturated green, and that's going to make the parts that are light green stand out a little bit more. And then I'm using my brush tool just to touch up areas that are that the Magic Wand tool did not get. Let me know if you appreciate these longer form videos. Typically I try to keep my videos to about 10 minutes or so. This one's about roughly, I think, 25, 26 minutes or so. It's not really a conventional approach, but I thought it would be just interesting to share just from an evolutionary standpoint, so you can see, you know, where I was at a particular time period and where I am now. And that with continued practice, regardless of where you think your skill levels are, you will improve. You just have to keep at it. I think that was the thing that really helped me. I love what I do. Drawing is just kind of in my blood. I don't think I can ever stop drawing. And it's just that aspect of sticking to it, I think, really helped me develop more as an artist. And of course, when you go to college, you take classes that are in the art field. I think it also allows you to learn new things in a structured way, and it does help out. Here I'm just playing with the color of the speed lines. I think after I finished recording this, I went back and made a few additional tweaks. Something that I also recommend when you're working with color is to periodically see what the grayscale version of it looks like, because it allows you to see whether or not you've got suitable contrast between each of the items that are in your composition. So I've got flat colors, and now what I would like to do is just create a little bit more nuance to the colors by first of all, just making the foot stand out a little bit more from the leg. So I'm going to make that a little bit darker. But then I'm also going to go back in and I'm going to add some shading around the character itself, just to make the character look a little bit more menacing. Like if you have certain parts of the character that are obscured in shadow, it just makes the character a little bit more mysterious. So here I'm using the lasso tool. I'm blocking off areas that I can then hit Command or Control J, duplicate, make it darker, so that it creates this rim light around the character. Looking at the grayscale version, checking it again. adding a little bit of light values to the lettering. This is like hand lettered and hand drawn. Just to make it pop a little bit more. And now you can see the before and the after. Just amazing how this character has been rescued from obscurity in my sketchbooks and my folder of old art, and now this character has a new purpose. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this character, but it's just kind of neat to see how the character turned out. And here's the final version. So if you found value in this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up so other folks can find it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.